Welcome to Sail and Beyond, a teen volunteer-led podcast brought to you by the Ocean County Library System. Today, I am your host, Isabella, and joining me are Mel and Krupam. In this episode, we are going to discuss our summer reading book recs. First question, what about a book keeps you engaged?
I think the best part of a book that keeps me engaged is I like to be dropped directly into the action. I don't have a very long mercy period for when a book starts. You just have to start when you say you're starting. Even if you have like a secret in the beginning that you don't say until the end, if the book is boring otherwise, I'll just look for the secret and stop reading the book.
I love starting off with like a mystery, because then the entire duration of the book I'll be like, are we getting there yet?
What message do you believe the author was trying to tell in like this book you're referencing?
Oh, I was talking about 1984, which there are quite a few different mysteries in there. 1984 was so good. I think Orwell, it's definitely all of the government stuff. He was very into making fun of the government. If you've read like Animal Farm or something like that, interesting thing, you can really connect the two.
Would you read more books by this author?
Absolutely. I want to read so many. Orwell is just fascinating to me.
One of my books I read this summer was Death in the Clouds by Agatha Christie, and I've already read 3 books by her. That one, Cards on the Table, and Elephants Can Remember. And I would absolutely keep reading her books. Cards on the Table was definitely my favorite one because when the detective just references like how people play cards to understand their personalities better, I think that is ingenious and it'd be kind of cool to do it. So.
I feel like a lot of gambling involves psychology, so definitely it's an interesting point.
You were referencing mystery novels earlier, right? Have you read the Fun Jungle series by Stuart Gibbs?
I have not.
It's really good. It's like a whole series, and each is like a mystery involving a zoo. So it's actually really good. I recommend more books by the author. He has written Spy School and The Three Musketeers. Well, not the original, but a twist on it. They're really good.
Twist books are always really interesting to me. There have been a lot of Disney twists.
Yeah, I read a twist book. It was twist off of Sherlock. It was called Lock and Maury, and they did it well. I don't remember the author, but what character would you like to meet and why?
Ooh. Once again, back to 1984. Surprise, surprise. Character O'Brien, who Winston interacts with a lot. It's a lot of jump in emotion when they interact, because at first he thinks he can confide in him, and then there are all of these different things about a secret society, which they never actually let on to the existence of. And then, a little bit of a spoiler, towards the end, he ends up basically burning into this mind all of this propaganda, and it's just such an interesting scene to listen to. He has this entire monologue that I reread because of how much I was just invested in it.
What do you guys look for when you choose a book?
I look for not a tropey plot. I know there are plenty of people who can sit and read the same book 1,000 times. I cannot do it, and I also cannot do coming-of-age stories. I look for an original crime plot. I like the crime books.
I might get like bashed for this, but name recognition. So I will read a book that somebody will be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. I don't know. That's always what draws me. Krupam?
When I'm choosing a book, I honestly, like, you know the expression, don't judge a book by its cover, but sometimes you can really judge a book by its cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, some covers are definitely more interesting than others.
Yeah. And just by reading the names, you can find really interesting ones that way.
From any of the books that you guys have read, is there like a scene that you just can't get out of your head?
Gotta think about that.
In this book that I read called The Assassination of Feng Wang's Verge. It talked a lot about, like, it was about elves and orcs, but I feel like you could apply that to different sides of the world in the real life, because it spoke a lot about how, because of war, people from different places can be taught different perspectives of the same story. And in one scene, the history professor from the orcs land and then the one from the elves, they're looking at this same object, and it has carvings of a war scene on it. And the elf keeps saying, no, that's the orcs who are terrorizing us. And the orc says, no, it's the elves who are terrorizing us. And they talk about how one person was portrayed as a war hero in the orc side and a warlord on the elf side, and how no matter where you are, you're probably just going to hear the best story about your place, and no one really ever knows the truth because of perspectives. And when they were arguing about that, I feel like it really revealed the themes of that book.
A lot of things in history are biased,
And
so
that's so true.
it's just really hard to know if what you're learning is real. For me, the scene in the Hunger Games, it's when Katniss is basically reflecting on back when she and Peeta were really little. Her mom was going through a really difficult time, probably due to some sort of mental illness, probably depression because of her father's death. She was trying to sell her little sister's baby clothes to get food for them, but nobody was buying. And on the way home, she passed a bakery, and she's been literally malnourished and starving. Now, Peeta is the boy with the bread. He purposely burned the loaves he was cooking and gave them to Katniss, and that's the reason she was able to survive until the spring to get more food. That part always just sticks with me because she felt like she owed him for a lot.
Yeah. When I try and think about what's my favorite scene, or I read a lot of books, so it's really hard for me to like think of one that really sticks with me. But I remember reading this one book called Keeper of the Lost Cities, and in one scene, I remember that there's this phenomenon called Everblaze. So it's a type of fire that can never be put out. I believe it's silver. It burns everything. Everything. And in this one scene, there's a group of people, and there's this prisoner who had the ability to control fire. And because the people in this book, they have abilities. One of these abilities is being able to read minds. So they're trying to read this guy's mind, the guy with the ability to control fire. And while doing so, it was actually a trap. He summoned Everblaze and destroyed several cities, all made of crystal. And yeah, that really stuck with me.
That book sounds like fire. Is there a genre that you want to try but you haven't yet?
You always mention dystopian to me.
Oh my goodness. Dystopian books are my baby girl. I love dystopian books.
I always go around to try and reading it, but I never get to.
It's so good. There's just something about a society that's so distorted that these people can't even tell. For all we know, we are living in a dystopia, which I guess is part of the point of it. And then there's always the utopian side. It's crazy because they think they live in a utopia. It just slowly, when a character is revealed to some sort of truth, you could see them realize how messed up their society is. And then in a situation, once again, like the Hunger Games, they just grew up in this world knowing everything was messed up. Amazing.
Oh my god.
Me in that question, I no, because I would read a lot of variety because you know, I used to take whatever cover looked pretty, and that introduced me to a lot of variety, and so I know what I like, I know what I don't like.
Now, speaking of what I like, what's the word? I am very fascinated by fantasy, more like obsessed. But anyway,
Real.
I read fantasy because it like how do you say this? It's hard to explain, but it like throws you into another world. It builds an entire society from like nothing. I also am very fascinated by magic systems, and
Yes.
we all love magic.
It's like an
Magic.
escape because, you know, it's
Yeah.
never going to happen here no matter how hard you try.
What I
That's
was
why-
just about to say is that I think the reason books with fantasy fascinated me so much, especially in like elementary school, is because all of the world seemed so much more interesting than what I was
Yeah.
doing. And
Exactly.
I don't do that as much as a form of escapism, I guess you could call it, but still, books are kind of like another home for me.
Yeah. As far as magic goes, you know what book that I've always wanted to exist but, you know, never did?
What?
You want-
Like a book where everyone has superpowers but things don't go wrong. Like I would have been fine reading
That-
Harry Potter.
Oh, wait.
There was never a problem.
Remember the book that I mentioned, Keeper of the Last Seas? It's like,
Yeah.
in a way, it is dystopian. Everybody has these special abilities, okay? Some can control fire, as I said before. Some can read minds. Some can read feelings. All these abilities, right? And their society seems perfect, but it's really messed up.
Pyrokinetics, psychologists.
You have no idea how messed up it is. Like,
Pyrokinetic psychologist. That
Yeah.
sounds great. I would do that.
So, on the opposite side, nonfiction books. What is your opinion on that?
Boring.
Yeah, what do you say? I'll read nonfiction books if they're interesting, but seriously, who has the patience to read those?
No. Unless I am researching
But yeah.
and a topic, then it's useful. But if it's something like a history book, well, you know the ending.
I was gonna say, out of most versions of nonfiction things, history is what I would prefer to learn
Yeah,
about.
history. Yeah. I love history. Don't get me wrong, but
So, historical fiction, what's your opinion?
I like historical fiction, but I don't like historical fiction. If you know what I'm saying.
I almost fell asleep in class, but that's not because that's not because I don't like historical fiction. That's because I was not enjoying the book.
My
Like,
thing for historical fiction is all entirely the fault of Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's not.
I like The Book Thief. That was really good. And then there was this book called Bomb, and it went into detail about the race to make the atomic bomb between the US and Russia. And I thought that was very interesting. And then I thought The
Yeah.
Book Thief was very interesting just because of, I thought it told the story very well. And otherwise, there was another book I read, and it was a prison escape. I don't remember what war, but they were like war prisoners, and they had to
Mhm.
escape. And I
That
really
sounds
liked
interesting.
it. Was I forget what it was called, but even the
Okay.
cover looked cool.
Yeah. So yeah.
I heard of The Book Thief. What is the premise of that?
It is the Holocaust, and there is a girl called Liesel, and in the beginning you learn that her mom and brother die, and she is adopted by a German family.
Is
A
she
German.
Jewish?
She is, but you're not supposed to find that out until the end. Good.
Whoops. Oopsie daisy.
Spoiler
It
alert.
doesn't do a lot to the plot. It's more like just an awakening moment of like, well, that could have been me. That was like
Yeah.
her mom.
Does she have, for her physical description, what does she look like?
They actually say in the book, her adoptive father actually says, "Thank goodness you have light hair and blue eyes."
So
Oh
she's
my
got the
God.
Aryan look.
Mm-hmm.
Aryan Jewish.
Yeah, but it just tells you like how horrible that time is. She observes how atrocious everything is.
Yeah. I remember I read this really great book. Cannot remember the name right now.
I hate when that happens.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like-
So, but it was a historical fiction on the Gilded Age. Now, I don't know if I come off as this, but I love the fashion of the Gilded Age. So,
I know, right?
the picture in my head I get when I read a historical fiction is always just so pleasing to me.
I know, isn't it like I love the old fashioned like in Renaissance fairs and the people who have the layered dresses where they had to have all
Petticoats?
those like the 14 layers of stuff probably took an
Yes.
hour to put together. I'm sure it's horribly uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to put one on. I mean, well, I would, but like it's so pretty. They're poofy.
Renaissance brings me back. I have this small book of Shakespeare sonnets. Are you guys into
I
Shakespeare?
do. I have the complete Shakespeare from Barnes and
I
Noble.
think that I was reading through his sonnets, and it's just so like pretty to me, the wording, even if flowery language is not your thing. It's just something, if you step back and appreciate it, it's just cool to look at.
I like A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's funny. That one
Tell me
scene,
about it.
That one scene where the people are putting on a play and they're like arguing over parts because the one guy, I don't know, one guy is like, wait, would I have to shave my beard? Like, someone's concerned about that. And I thought it was just so funny because it was these guys just arguing. Like, someone had to be a lion or something. It was funny.
Even a poet back in the day had a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you guys feel about mythology?
I love mythology.
Mythology.
That was mythical creatures. That's
Yes.
Mythical.
Griffins.
Do you guys have a favorite mythical creature?
I do.
I mean,
like-
if I say my favorite, you're probably not going to know what it is.
What is it?
That's a good question.
Do you know it?
Good question. I know my favorite mythology. I don't know much about the creatures because most of the creatures are murdering monsters. So,
Isn't that like most?
like, good
mythology
point, but
people?
like some of these things. Yeah, so I was reading this one mythology series called Arushan, The End of Time. It's really good. It's very interesting how one of the characters is a snake person, so that's
Snake person?
Nagini or Naga.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I've seen those.
Okay.
Those are cool. My personal favorites are sphinxes and
Yeah.
chimeras.
Right. Sirens.
Ooh, those are nice.
Have you guys ever heard of a Kelpie?
I heard of them. Aren't
That's
they?
somewhere going.
Yes. Aren't they like similar to mermaids and sirens? In some sort
Kelpies
of
are
way?
kind of terrifying to me because basically they're a horse and they look like a normal horse. When a person would go to pet them, it would fuse into them and then
Oh,
it would
that's-
go and drown them in the
I
water.
have heard of kelpies. Yes, I have heard of that.
That's great.
I kind of forget where I heard about that.
I forget where I heard it too.
Yeah, like you hear them mentioned in like mythology books, but
Yeah.
you never really get much detail on them.
My choice on mythology would be Greek mythology.
Oh.
There's this collection of Greek mythology by, I think, Edith Hamilton. My mom told me it's
Hamilton.
really good. I think one of the most interesting ones to me is the story of Persephone and Hades. Familiar with it?
I am. It is.
No, I'm not.
My favorite is the story of Echo and Narcissus.
That one, the flower too.
Mm,
Ugh,
that one kind of hits hard.
it's
It's so sad.
it's not really sad to me. It's kind of just
No, I
funny.
No, it's sad. She was just doing a favor for Zeus, and then she didn't know why she was distracting Hera, right? She didn't know that it was not good.
Are we thinking of the same one?
No, it started. She lost her voice and could only echo people because. It was a
Oh,
punishment.
okay.
That was like the
that
very
part.
beginning.
My bad.
Yeah, did she know like that it was bad? Did she know Zeus's had malintent or like? I don't think she did.
All of
so
the
then I feel
people-
bad for her.
All people that suffer the wrath
Yeah.
of Hera don't know what they did wrong.
Yeah, it's a little sad. Like, I feel bad for her. She just got like her ability to speak just taken away. She didn't even know why. She probably still does not know why because she no longer has the ability to ask.
I love that mythology is just an explanation for the unexplainable.
Yeah, like some of the mythology that I've read, I like Indian mythology because I'm Indian, so it's nice to know more about my culture. But some of these stories, example, there's one about ocean of milk.
Like the mammal product.
No, well, yeah, wait, yeah, it's very like. Do you guys want to hear it?
If you'd
I
like.
have
Sure.
Elaborate.
Okay. So once there's this very, 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 very 10,000 varies powerful sage, right? He was grumpy or something, and he cursed all the gods. He's like, "Here, now you're gonna lose your immortality."
Imagine imagine being so annoyed. You curse the gods.
Wait, did he just have audacity? Or, like, did he have a reason for being
he was
grumpy?
like more powerful than the gods at this point
Yeah,
because of
but,
how
like-
much meditation he does.
Why was he grumpy though?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Maybe he just woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah, the
Why?
guy curses the gods to lose their immortality and power. So they wanted their immortality back. So at the bottom of the ocean of milk is something called the nectar of immortality. I forget what the fancy name for it is.
What, ambrosia?
No.
That's Greek mythology again. My bad.
I thought
Yeah,
it was a dessert.
wrong mythology.
It is a dessert.
Wrong mythology. So they churn the ocean milk. You know how they churn the ocean milk? So the demons help them, the asuras, the animal-headed, shape-shifting, evil bad guys. Yeah,
Wow.
I know, right?
Alrighty.
And the nagas. The king of the nagas, King Snake, right? He was the rope or something that helped them churn. So they all churned the ocean of milk. So many other things came out of the ocean of milk. So the actual nectar of immortality, a seven-headed horse, which became the godly mount to Vishnu, the god of preservation, I'm pretty sure, or creation. I'm not sure.
The three main is Rava, Shiva, and Vishnu, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
He got seven-headed horse godly mount thing, and then a very, 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 very again 10,000 just poison, right?
Poison?
So yes, poison. You know why Shiva's neck is blue? You know Shiva,
Yes.
Lord of
Yeah.
Destruction? He drank the poison, and that's why his throat is blue.
I wonder if there's a poison that can legitimately do that to people.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting. So, yeah. And then they got the nectar of immortality. And then the gods were like, psych, and they took the nectar for themselves.
Psych. I
Oh,
love the way
yeah.
that was put.
great.
Yeah, they didn't give the demons any. So,
Despite their helping.
yeah. So that's why there's a god and demon war.
Tough man.
I know, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Indian mythology is very violent. Like in this other story, Lord Shiva cuts off the head of his kid and puts an elephant head back on.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah. Otherwise, his wife would, destroy the universe.
Oh, what is with mythology?
You have no idea.
Like,
They came up with the most violent, sad explanation for
Oh,
things.
yeah.
Like, why can't...
Oh, yeah, and his wife made the kid out of sand.
Oh.
people
Yeah.
that have people that created mythology have like this odd bloodlust. Like,
I know, right?
Like,
Cutting people's head off. That's
there's
great.
gotta be like a happy
Yay.
explanation
There is no.
for stuff.
There is no happy explanation.
even for things that are generally considered happy, a lot of
Why
times the
not?
explanation is
Yeah,
sad.
like,
The narcissus flower.
oh, pretty flower. No.
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 Death.
Oh my.
Death because of arrogance.
Feels typical.
The fact that he was arrogant, like, only played into it a little bit, too.
Something like a very specific question when it comes to books.
Oh.
What kind of wording are you looking for? Like,
I like descriptive wording myself. I like when I can picture an entire scene in my head.
it's the realest thing.
I like
know, right?
1800s Victorian style writing. A singular
God,
sentence
that's
that takes
hard.
a paragraph long. You know, I write like that just because I read so much like that, and my teacher's like, Mel, what are you doing? You can't understand this. I'm like, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
If whoever is like listening to this, I'm putting my hands over my heart because I agree with that so much.
It's the best. It just brings you back.
The wording in the books, specifically like Anne of Green Gables or like The Secret Garden, there's no other way for me to describe it. It's just in those books, there's this sort of childhood wonder to it, but at the same
Mhm.
time, it has a very refined sound
Yeah.
to everything.
I like that. I personally experienced the really old-timey wording, not for the first time, but for like the realest time when I read the Sherlock Holmes books, which they've got to be some of my favorites now. And it wasn't another language, but if I showed up to school talking like that, people would be asking for me to say things clearer, and I know that because that's actually exactly what happened.
The problem when I read a book, well, not really a problem, but I'll read a book for a extended period of time.
I agree with you.
And then I start talking, and all of a sudden, I sound like the characters in that book.
Never mind.
Yep.
I'm reading To Kill a Mockingbird right now. I swear, one day I accidentally had a southern twang.
Oh my gosh, I do that if I'm narrating in a British accent. I'll just start talking British and I'm like, what? Where did that come from?
Where?
Speaking of reading, like, I have this thing where if I start reading a good book, I cannot put it down. What about you guys?
Yes.
And then you start reading it too. Oh look, why is it 3 in the morning?
Oh yeah.
Binge reading.
One more chapter.
One more chapter.
That's the biggest lie.
Yeah.
Like, look at the clock. It's getting late. One more chapter.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the sunrise?
I'm totally gonna be awake.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm totally gonna wake up at 7 and go to the library.
And then
Right?
my parents will be like, no, you're up early. Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming I slept.
What is your opinion, both of you guys, on poetry?
I like poetry. I can write poetry, but
I love poetry. I have a quill pen and ink. And there have been times where I have just been feeling that way, and I write poetry, quill pen and ink. And I feel
totally
like Shakespeare.
I totally haven't been putting together a collection or anything.
oh yeah,
Ooh,
I
no.
would definitely not want to read your not collection.
Right?
I
Right?
know, right?
I would hate to trade poetry with you sometime. That would be
That would be horrible.
Yeah, a terrible
I
experience.
always used to think, like, before I got into it, that poetry was boring, sappy, and had to rhyme. I didn't know
Well,
that
like-
you didn't have to do that.
It was portrayed that way in every cartoon.
Yeah, I know, right?
If someone wrote poetry, they were either a nerd, boring, or like lovelorn or
Yeah.
something. Like, no, it's more than
Well,
that.
I am a nerd, so.
Well, I also am a nerd, but
I'm
like
not-
that's not why.
I'm not going to disagree with any of this. I had a point before. We'll get back to that.
We'll find it somewhere. It's not lost.
Oh, right. Acrostic poetry was what I learned in elementary school,
We all learned that.
and it made me feel like, what am I looking at?
I had to like purposely extend my vocabulary just so I could come up with like a word for wonderful that starts with Q or something. Like, I hate it.
I'm all for expanding my vocabulary. Some books, though. Some books.
Speaking of like expanding vocabulary, the book of all time, the dictionary, guys. Opinions.
Wait, oh my gosh. So I was talking to my friends one day and I'm like, so I was playing the dictionary game and they're like, no, what's that? And I was like, uh-oh, I'm about to be called a nerd. And you flip to a random page and the first word you see, you say the word. And you have to guess the definition or the spelling, maybe and, like, it doesn't matter, however you want to play, assuming you can find someone to play the dictionary game with you. And my friends just looked at me like, are you insane? And I'm like,
I promise I'm not.
I mean,
I promise
maybe
you
an
were, they can
AI
tell.
can play with you, because that's how life is nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
So-
You want to do something nerdy? You have your AI.
Yeah.
One day I was very, very bored and I cracked open my dictionary. I do love the dictionary in
Oh,
general.
wow.
I'm looking through it and I'm like, people annotate books. What is stopping me from annotating the dictionary? And I was like, guys, I say guys, I ended up having all of these little post-it notes and little things and little highlights, and I was enjoying myself way too much.
I would too. Like, oh, this is a good word to use in this particular scenario that I will never be in.
You know what word I learned from annotating the dictionary?
What?
Akimbo. Akimbo. It's when you stand with your like hands on
that
your
Arms
hips.
akimbo.
Yeah, I did not know that was a thing.
I only knew it because I was reading this magazine called The Art of Deception, and it went into like criminal profiling type thing, like not reading people's minds, but for the most part, reading people's minds. And one of the things was if someone's getting angry, they may stand arms akimbo.
It's been fun talking to you all about our book recommendations, among other things. So
Like,
we're going to bid adieu, say farewell, goodbye from us.
Adios.
Ciao.
Abdo.
Bye.